Live NFL trivia every Wednesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge for a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. To start off, I'm going to give you a golf scenario. Suppose you're on the 18th hole and you're playing against one of your friends for a fairly significant amount of money. So this means something. You're up by one stroke. So even though this one's not over by a long shot, you're in a fairly good spot. This 18th hole is a par 5 that's over 500 yards, and from 250 yards off the tee box to 280 yards, there's a giant water hazard. Because of that, most people decide to lay up. They'll play an iron or a wood and hit a 220 off the tee, then go over the hazard on 2, and then go for the green on 3. Theoretically, it's possible to drive it over the water hazard with a great, long, and straight drive, and because of that, it's definitely possible to reach in 2. However, it is an incredibly risky shot. You aren't the strongest driver in the world, and you've never hit a drive that has gone beyond 270 in your life. Again, up by one stroke, would you even consider, for 1 second, the possibility of hitting a driver off the tee, even though you've never successfully hit that shot in your life? To do that seems ridiculously stupid. To try that is so high risk, and the reward isn't even that great. You're not guaranteed at all to reach the green in 2 or do well in the hole, as even though you're in a good spot, you've got to do well with your short game. You're in a great spot, and you're willing to throw it all the way to try something that in your life, you've never successfully done before? Well, if you decided in this hypothetical scenario that yes, you were going to try this, then congratulations. Not only are you really stupid, but you might just be Detroit Lions head coach Dan Campbell. Only this isn't some random hypothetical golf match. This is an NFL game against a division rival that has major implications on the season. Now is not the time to get greedy and get risky, because if you do, well, there's a very good chance that it's going to end like it did on Sunday. For those who aren't watching this in the immediate aftermath of the game, here's a brief recap of everything that happened up until this point. It's September 25th, 2022. It's week 3 of the NFL season, and we have an NFC North matchup on our hands at US Bank Stadium over in Minneapolis between the Detroit Lions and the Minnesota Vikings. This is a big game for both teams for obvious reasons. Aside from the fact that you get a critical win in the division tiebreaker, the winner of this game sits above 500 after 3 weeks at 2-1, while the loser falls to 1-2. And historically speaking, that's a big deal. Of the 7 teams to make the playoffs in 2021 in the NFC, 6 of them were at 2-1 or better after 3 weeks, with 6 out of the 7 teams to start 2-1 that season making the playoffs. In other words, in the 2 years that the playoffs expanded to 7 teams, if you're in the NFC and you start 2-1, your odds of making it to the playoffs skyrocket. And if you start 1-2, well, your odds completely plummet. Safe to say, in this big rivalry game, a lot was on the line. And in this back and forth affair, with just 3 minutes left in the contest, the Lions found themselves up 24-21. Detroit was on the front foot the whole time, never trailing at any point. They led 14-0 midway through the second quarter, led 24-14 at the end of 3 quarters, and now we're looking to close this one out after forcing the Vikings to turn the ball over on downs. With 2:24 left, the Vikings only have 1 timeout along with the 2-minute warning. So if you can get a first down here, the ball game is over, and you win. On first down, Jamal Williams loses 4 yards. That didn't go according to plan, but it does force the Vikings to burn their 3rd and final timeout. On second down, the Lions get no yards, as Jamal Williams gets stuffed again. This forces the Lions into a pretty rough spot, needing to get 14 yards for the first down if they want to end the game. And while the bad news is that they can't get it, the good news is that they get 10 yards, so they pick up a good chunk of those yards back. Right now, you're at the 37-yard line needing 4 yards. At this point, you've got 3 options. You can go for it and try and get 4 yards, knowing that if you get the 4 yards, you've got the win. Or you could punt the ball away with Jack Fox and try and pin the Vikings deep, forcing them to drive a solid 60 or so yards just to get into field goal range and tie the game, and make it almost impossible for them to go 90 yards in that length of time with no timeouts to potentially win it in regulation. Those are the two options that I think a lot of people were thinking. Get the win and try and get 4 yards, or punt it away and force the Vikings to drive a long way. I mean, there is a third option here. You could try what would amount to a ridiculously long field goal with kicker Austin Seibert. But come on, there's no logical reason to try that here. If you miss the kick, you're pretty much giving the Vikings the ball at midfield, meaning that they don't have to do a whole lot of anything to tie the game. If you make the kick, you're still giving it back to the Vikings, and a touchdown for the Vikings still wins it, so not a whole lot changes there. Oh, and it's not like you have Justin Tucker back there. You have Austin Seibert, a man who's never made a kick from this distance in his life. So let's rule the field goal out of the picture, because it doesn't make sense. Now personally, I go for the win from 4 yards out, although I get the idea of trying to pin them deep inside the 10-yard line if you want to play that field position battle. So Dan Campbell's got an interesting decision to make between those two options.
Kick on the way, and he pushed it wide right.
Wait, he kicked it? He actually kicked it? He actually called the field goal? With a guy that's never hit from that distance in his life? Well, I'm sure this awful move that gives the Vikings the ball at midfield won't backfire in any way whatsoever.
Today for this Minnesota offense. Cousins, he's got it, touchdown, it's Osborne again!
Welcome to Dumb Decisions. Before I break down what happened here, this whole series is about taking an in-depth look at decisions made during games that were clearly awful from the start. This isn't something look bad in hindsight. Rather, this is something look awful almost immediately. These are moves where your gut instinct tells you right away that there is no way this can possibly work. And sure enough, your gut instinct was smarter than that of an NFL head coach. And for this one, we're taking a look at the mind of Detroit Lions head coach Dan Campbell. Look, I love Dan Campbell. I know how you can hate the guy. His attitude and his energy are infectious. You listen to the man speak, and you want to run through a brick wall for him. The man has brought a culture change to Detroit, and compared to Matt Patricia, it's like night and day. But I think we need to talk about the fact that it's year 2, and I still have major doubts about whether he can actually manage a game and control in-game situations. Because holy cow, he has made a ton of questionable decisions in his coaching career thus far, and we're only 20 games into it. There was the awful clock management on Thanksgiving last year against the Bears, including a sequence where they called a timeout, then called another timeout right after that, which isn't allowed, then had 12 men on the field right after that. There was the decision, up by 2 points with 4 minutes left last year against the Vikings, to call a passing play and go for it on 4th and 1 on the 28-yard line. Not the Vikings' 28-yard line, their own 28-yard line. It ended in predictably bad fashion. And just adding to the long list of blunders made by Campbell in the middle of the game, we have this awful decision to try a 54-yard field goal for no reason, which ended up costing his team the game. So with that being said, let's take a look at why trying a 54-yard field goal up by 3 points instead of going for it, or punting the ball away, is a really bad idea. And the basic premise behind this idea is simple. You're up by 3. I'm not saying pump the brakes and go ultra conservative, but there is no reason to take any chances on low probability plays when you do not have to. And with that, let's take a look at the kicker responsible for this 54-yarder that would have put the Lions up by 6, Austin Seibert. Seibert has been in the NFL since 2019, kicking for the Lions, Bengals, and Browns. He's attempted 54 field goals before this, and has hit on 44 of them, hitting 81.5% of the time. Not great by any means, but you can definitely do worse. You're watching a compilation of some of his made kicks right now, and you might be noticing something in particular. You might be noticing something that's missing, and might be noticing something that's not there. You might be noticing that there are no long field goals here, and that's because, well, he doesn't hit long field goals. From 49 plus yards in his career, Seibert is 2 for 5, so while he's extremely reliable from close range, not missing anything in his career from inside 40, push him back, and he becomes incredibly erratic. Since joining the NFL in 2019, his longest field goal ever was 53 yards, meaning that this 54-yard kick would have been a career best in the NFL if he made it. But hang on, because it gets worse. Because prior to joining the Lions, Seibert played 4 years of college football at the University of Oklahoma. In his career there, he attempted 79 field goals. Want to know the longest make of his career with the Sooners? It was 51 yards. And prior to joining Oklahoma, Seibert played 4 years of varsity high school football at Bellevue West High School in Illinois, where he attempted 44 field goals. Want to know the longest make of his career there? It was also 51 yards. That means that, since 2011, across all levels, in game-like situations, Seibert has attempted 177 field goals. And yet, on these 177 attempts, not a single one of them was a make from 54 yards out or more. This meant that, for this play to work as intended, the Lions needed their kicker, who did not have a strong leg and was noteworthy for not being good from long range, to hit his career best distance and do it with accuracy. Now obviously, I'm not saying that players should never try kicks that are longer than their personal best. That would be stupid, and obviously, you can't really get a new personal best past your first kick if you never try that. If this was the end of regulation and the Lions were tied with 2 seconds left, I'm not going to say that they should go for the Hail Mary to the end zone instead of the 54-yard field goal, because Seibert's never made a 54-yarder before. If you're down by 2 with 1 second left, and you're at the 43-yard line, and you want Seibert to try a 60-yarder, again, no problem with that. I'm just saying that there is a time and a place to try things like this, and up by 3 points, where the penalty for missing tremendously outweighs the rewards of making it, is not that time. It's like that golf example from the top of the video. There are certain chances that you just don't take when you're winning when you've never successfully pulled it off before. Especially when of the 3 options you could have chosen from, this was, by far, the worst of the bunch. The goal for the Lions should have been one of 2 things: win the game, or pin the Vikings deep and make it tough for them to drive down the field. If you go for it on 4th down, you can accomplish that first objective of winning the game should you succeed. If you punt the ball and have it down inside the 10 or the 5, you can accomplish that second objective of pinning them deep and making life difficult for them. Pin them deep and force them to drive about 70 yards to get what they need, or win the game by getting 4 yards. But if you kick the field goal, you can't do either of those things. Even if you kick the field goal and you make it, it doesn't win you the game, because the Vikings still win it with a touchdown and an extra point. And even if you make it, especially since none of your kicks have gone for touchbacks all day, the Vikings are likely starting with the ball around the 30-yard line, needing to drive about 70 yards to get what they need. So not only is the best case scenario in this option basically the same as the realistic scenario in the punting option, but the worst case scenario in this option is that, because of where the ball is spotted after a missed field goal, the Vikings are starting with better field position than you would have given up on a punt or if you went for it and failed. Plus, with going for it and failing, if your 2 options are to get 4 yards on a down where you're already 4 for 6 on the day, so it's not like you're having a whole lot of trouble on 4th down, and when you're averaging over 5.5 yards per play, or to get 54 yards with a kicker that's never hit from that distance before, especially when the first of those 2 options guarantees the win if successful, and the second option guarantees absolutely nothing, the fact that you're taking the field goal is absolutely baffling. I don't get how you can go for it on 4th down all game long, and have it work pretty much the entire game, and then decide, in the perfect time to go for it, to opt for a career-long field goal that you just knew Seibert never had a chance at making, especially since he missed one from long range earlier in the game. After the game, at least Campbell owned the decision, so he knows he screwed up badly. As Campbell said, "I freaking regret my decision there at the end. I should have gone for it on 4th down. I told the team that. Should have gone for it." But here's the problem. Even though it's nice that Campbell is admitting this problem, we're in year 2 of the Campbell experiment, and I've yet to see a significant improvement in how he manages the game. It's good that he's taking the blame for an awful decision on his end, but it doesn't change the outcome, or the fact that a common theme on the field throughout his entire tenure has been horrible mismanagement of seemingly obvious in-game situations. Because let's be honest, considering how bad Seibert has been from long range over his entire career, and unless he somehow hit a kick in the middle school game from this distance, Seibert had never made a field goal of 54 plus yards in a game before, And considering how little a field goal does for you in the end from a field position standpoint and a win probability standpoint, this was a no-brainer to either punt the ball or go for it. Dan Campbell could have picked heads or tails, and instead, he decided to bet on the coin landing on its side. So what did we learn from all this? Don't try career-long plays that require the player in question to make the best play of his career at any level if you have the lead, don't need to do so, and doing so serves no benefit whatsoever, even if you make it. If you have a chance to win the game, and you've been succeeding on that down all game, and have been picking up that distance with ease all day, then go ahead and win the game. Or if you want to play field position, and one option pins the opposition at the 20 in the worst case scenario, and inside the 5 in the best case scenario, and the other option puts the opposition at the 20 in the best case scenario, and who knows where in the worst case scenario, since we're talking about a kickoff, then go ahead and pick that first option. And points are nice, but sometimes you don't have to go for them, because going for them and failing in a play that had a high chance at failing can lead to significant points the other way for the other team. Because when all these elements are in play, you can't exactly be surprised when this play backfires. Talk about a dumb decision. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JaguarGator9. To see college football videos, subscribe to JaguarGator8. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.